Hello, and welcome to Upload, the weekly program where we take our collective consciousness and upload it to your mind. Today, on today's podcast, well, first off, I'm the host, Andrew Moody. I keep forgetting to mention my name. Maybe there's a reason for that. And, of course, joining us today, Bobby Del Rio.
Hi.
Oh, wow.
Mr.
Magic.
Todd Van Allen.
Apartment walls are more important than people.
The irrepressible Lewis Taylor.
The pen did it.
A returning guest, Megan Larson.
Hello, I'm back.
And for the first time ever, not only one, but two women on the program.
Two chicks. Two of us.
Oh,
Lone, what's going on, man?
wow.
Calm down, Todd.
Jeez,
Calm
the
down,
simps
Todd.
are taking over, dude. All right.
Wow.
The one,
Okay.
the only, the amazingly talented, super smart, and you better live up to this. Incredibly insightful, Heather Jopling.
Okay. Cheers. Yes.
Yay.
First time listener, long time caller. How does it go? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, of course, the first thing we're going to talk about is the legal results of the Breonna Taylor trial. And who would like to tackle that first?
Let's let someone white do it.
Oh,
How
somebody
about
wait.
Todd?
I dare
We're
you.
watching you.
Todd, go for it.
Tread
Talk
carefully.
about it.
Yeah,
Please.
you know what? I gotta say, it's about time the middle-aged white man was heard from.
I know, right? What's your
It's
perspective?
about damn time. I am so sick of my race
No.
right now. I am there. I was thinking of this just before I was coming on. There are very few white people that are covering themselves in glory these days, and this is another stab at that. And I feel horrible starting this segment because it's not my voice that needs to be listened to.
I was going to say it's actually really great to hear from allies. It is.
Sure, but there are people closer to this than me, more erudite than I am, that are going to be able to put into words the baseless decision that was made at a higher court. Don't also forget that this was done in Kentucky, and guess who their fucking senator is. This is deplorable on so many levels, and I can't imagine what would have happened to those officers if Breonna Taylor was white and they burst into an apartment and killed a white woman. They would probably be facing a death penalty. And the fact that they got criminal negligence against shooting bullets into a wall. And are facing
One officer. Yeah.
one officer.
Yeah.
So is numbing. And for them to already have kind of telegraphed this out and to call in the National Guard just in case. They knew what's going on. It starts at the top. It has been, in the words of Chris Rock, racism is always, I'm paraphrasing and butchering this, but like racism is now just being taped. It was always there. And now we're seeing more and more of it. And we have to fix this. And the only way we're going to do this is to get lizard fucking turtle heads like Mitch McConnell out of the Senate. Lindsey Graham, kick him to the curb. Ted Cruz, the less we see about him, the better. And for me, it ends with Donald Trump leaving the Oval Office in handcuffs. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying to a degree, but what this brings out for me, especially looking at a global history of human fuckery, that it's even deeper for me because this is what we do when we're in power and someone is struggling against our power. it is even more disheartening for me. And also the notion of justice and law. Supposedly riding above what's the word I'm looking for? And I just lost my brain again. Riding above notions of, social, emotional. It is something that is clearly uninfluenced by politics. And I can just see this governor from Kentucky getting a call from Trump saying, we have got your back, right? We are there for you. There is a whole system that is rising up and saying, no more, we're going to shut this down, just as we always have. And maybe the fiction of legality and justice will stand the test of time or it'll collapse, but we do not care.
You're right, Lou. It feels like there really is no justice. I mean, just think about it. I don't know if you guys have watched 13th by Ava DuVernay, but essentially the criminal justice system was created to re-enslave Black people after slavery was abolished, because you're allowed to, in the 13th Amendment, you're allowed to legally re-enslave people if they've committed a crime. And so that's the basis of this. And when this is the basis of the justice system that is operating, it's very clear why things like this happen. I mean, white perpetrators have always been undercharged, and Black neighborhoods have always been over-policed and over-arrested. And especially when it comes to cops, the justice system is always working in favor of them no matter what they do. So it's terrifying and it's terrible. And you're right, Lou. It's almost as if justice is a myth. And it's very sad to see it play out again and again and again throughout history.
So I'm gonna start by being a little bit provocative here, because I think that I think this is a more complicated issue than the mainstream narratives on either sides are sort of procuring. I'm not sure how much of a racial issue this is, quite frankly. And maybe it's just because I'm the son of a lawyer, so I grew up in this environment. Because for me, as soon as I heard that the boyfriend shot first, I was like, oh, they're going to get off. Because and this for me is the complicating factor, right? Is that white people and Black people hate each other in the United States generally. And I think that any opportunity a white person in power has to kill a Black person, it usually ends up with the Black person being killed. So for me, I think it's very important to understand that, and to understand also that the laws are skewed in this way where once they have the power to execute, they will use that power. And the problem is that as soon as you resist arrest, as soon as you shoot them, and they can make the claim in a court of law that they are endangered, right? They can use the fullest extent of what they call force, which just means now I get to kill you. And so this is the scary thing, right? Is that it all hinges on this little detail that is actually the point of the whole case, right? Which is like, if they can prove that there was a threat against them, they can do whatever they want. And I mean, it's just like one bullet comes that way, and then they send like 20 bullets the other way. And it's like, unless you overhaul the entire system, you're never ever going to win within that system.
Exactly. But here's the thing too with that in the States, isn't it legal to defend yourself when someone's breaking into your home with your gun? So
some of the states,
right,
Kentucky,
in the
absolutely.
States.
Most of them have stand your ground
Yeah.
legislation.
And from what I understand, I could correct me if I'm wrong, but the issue also is with the no-knock entry. So because police officers in the United States don't have a right to simply enter your premises. They don't. So, but because of this particular loophole in the law, if you get a no-knock warrant, then you can actually just burst down somebody's door. And if
Yeah, and sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt you, Andrew. That and the one thing I think that came up in the grand jury was that there was a witness who had heard the police actually announce themselves before this, regardless of the fact that they were at the wrong address, regardless of that fuck up on their part, and the fact that Breonna Taylor is basically collateral damage. And that they basically just decided to throw money at the problem rather than really look at the issue of the fact that, you know, as you were saying, that, you know, like one bullet was shot in what that person thought was self-defense for their home being broken into, and then 20 were sent back, of which I mean, how many times was she shot? Was she hit?
Like five to 8 times.
God, I think, wasn't it 7?
No one knows for sure. Look, it's the same thing with Jacob Blake, and this is my point. There's a larger purview here, right? It's that, okay. So Jacob Blake resisted arrest. Yes, he did. And then he went to his car. Yes. And then they found the opportunity to put 7 bullets in his back, right? It's the same thing. The problem is that legally they're protected because he resisted arrest, right? They're protected because one bullet came first, but then it's not like, oh, like let's send one, it's like 20 go back, right? So I understand both sides, right? Because legally I understand the system, but I mean, the system, first of all, if you don't have money, you can't win in that system, right? So a common strategy in the legal world is you just bleed out the other side, right? So all that means is if you have resources financially and they don't, there's like all these, you file another motion, oh, you delay it another 6 months, you do, like there's all these different ways that you're basically just creating a war of attrition where you're just causing the other person to spend money until they stop and then you win.
I think it's not that I disagree with you on this, I do, but there is a very strong racialized element to this that goes back to the creation of the state. So, and it's one that is not fully structured and going in one direction. Lots of white folk, when they have protested against capitalism, have been shot by Pinkertons, have been shot by the US Army. It is not specifically and only Black people that have faced the ire of the police. It's never stopped for Black people in the States. And there has never been a political will to reshape the legislation, the laws of that country. And that is where I think the disappointment, it's not even the exhaustion and the rage that Black people are feeling is coming from. And also, what's not acknowledged is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but at all of these protests, I'm seeing way more white people than, and more and more, I'm seeing more and more white people than Black people. So this isn't a Black protest specifically. This is a huge demographic of people rising up against this kind of unilateral action.
And you know what?
I've seen.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I've seen a lot of white people going to protest to protect Black protesters. I've seen these videos in the early stages of the protests where there were cops and there were a bunch of white people who held hands and made a line in front of the Black protesters because they knew, cops, you're not going to hit me, so what are you going to do?
And I was going to push back a little bit on what Bobby said, because I honestly, after having been in the States a few times working and stuff, and even in Missouri, I honestly don't think that many Black people and white people hate each other. I really don't. I think a large majority of Americans, both white and Black, actually get along quite well, and that there's just pockets of people, and there are fringe people, like the KKK are a fringe element that do not represent the majority of white Americans. They really don't.
See, I understand the frustration of the African American community because they're being murdered, right? Like irrefutably, you have people who look different who are being killed, and leads to poverty and incarceration, right? Like I don't think that you can argue these facts, but for me, I guess, and I was sort of inculcated into a legal system growing up, so I understand. It like everybody gets screwed in the legal system, right? It's like men complain about they're less likely to have child rights, and like there's many different people who, depending on how the system has been set up, it's either advantageous to you or not advantageous, and it really skews money. Right. So the more money you have, the more likely you are to get justice within that paradigm. And so this is the frustration, is that in the African American community, you have a deeply poor community, generally speaking. So how are you going to really get the justice you're seeking when you need money to get that justice?
Well, and the other problem is like not only does the Black community suffer from a lack of financial resources and justice, but also the Black community has been one of the biggest hit by COVID and by this pandemic. And we have seen that, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. We have seen now 200,000 deaths in America from this pandemic. And the president seems to feel like he's doing a pretty good job.
Of course he does.
USA.
So,
USA.
Heather, what do you
Well,
think?
so if we can talk a little bit about that, and this goes back to our last point, which is the fact that if you have the president of the United States, who is basically a racist, so he's, or he thinks that he's the highest level of law in the world. So if he basically has no support of the rest of the country, and in particular, the people in the country who are disenfranchised, who are blue-collar workers, who have domestic jobs, who are, working in the grocery stores, working as waiters, who cannot afford to stay at home. They're not white-collar workers who can work from home. So they are the most disadvantaged in terms of who's out there and who's actually, keeping the country running, both not only in the United States, but also in Canada, that has these people who are, you've got your 16-year-olds who are working, at the grocery store, who have been basically put in harm's way since the beginning of this, with no concept of this kid who's working for minimum wage, and their parent, can work from home because they're making whatever, 75K or, these sorts of things. So the amount of people of color who are ending up, in the hospital, in the ICU, dying because they have been more exposed to the virus than all these great white collar workers who, are just working from home, feeling great,
Well, I'm gonna push back on that point, because I think the problem is that Trump has a lot of support, right? Like I think the country is completely bifurcated, and you have basically 50% of the country is against him and 50% is for him. But so I think what's happening, and unfortunately, there's so many people's, like, unfortunately, Breonna Taylor is such a terrible metaphor for that country, right? Is that I really do believe that race is being used by the Trump administration as a political tool to distract people from the fact that they've completely screwed up COVID, right? That many people have died through sheer incompetence. And so his only hope is to spin all the race stories into, like, look at these crazy Black people, only your white president can protect you from them. And I think that's what's happening.
It's very scary too, what Trump supporters will let Trump get away with. I know we talked about this the last time I was a guest, and right after I sent you guys a video on the Stephen Colbert show, they basically did a fake focus group with fake little ad campaigns saying, oh, this is what Trump's planning on putting out, right?
Narrated,
And
of course, by Triumph, the insult comic dog.
yes, of course.
And it was wonderful. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it was like I
No.
literally had just got done watching it on my own, and then it was like, oh, Megan sent something to the thread. Oh, cool! Like it was so good to see it.
And there was a part 2, by the way. Just say it.
Oh my gosh, I have to go
Okay.
see that.
Yeah,
All
Well,
right.
part 1 was insane because the first thing was, children are immune to the virus. We should put them to work. And the reactions, you'd expect it to be like, oh my God, that's terrible. No, let's not. But they said, one of them says, maybe not 6-year-olds, but 12-year-olds.
12-year-olds.
And then one of them comes in and you think she's going to be the voice of reason for a second because she thinks, no, not children. And you're going, oh, okay. And then she goes, but the Mexicans can do it. And
Oh my God. But also when we're watching clips like that, right? Like they're edited so that you're getting the cream of the crop of the idiots, right?
right.
They're not giving you the 8 out of 10 people who are like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Mhm.
Not
Yeah.
Victorian England, this is whatever. So that they're skewing it in a certain way that, to meet their mandate or whatever, or their joke.
Right.
I feel like now you were talking Bob about the fact that half of Americans are for Trump and half Americans are anti-Trump. I want to kind of push back a little bit in that I wouldn't say necessarily that it's half the country is for him. Half of the voters are for him. And I think that's a number that is, and we just don't know, because what was the voter turnout the last time? Was it 60% of voters actually voted? I'm hopeful that this time around on November 3rd that there will be, could we hope for 75% of registered voters will vote? Like, I can't imagine.
All the polling, it's like right now, this election is going to be so close. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's actually going to be less close than people like this. He's pulling out all the Republicans are pulling out all the stops as far as disenfranchising wide swaths of the American population. So depending on what they can do with the post office, depending on what they can do with allegations of voter fraud, that I think is going to be a crucial element in determining this next election.
Why do you
The
think that?
whole thing, just sorry, Heather, I just want to first of all give you a shout out for if we are found out that we can't use upload as a title for this show, cream of the crop of idiots, I think will work just fine.
Yes,
Thank
that's
you for that.
perfection.
That's up.
But to Lewis's point, I mean, Trump is already digging his heels in and saying, I'm not going. And he's got Andrew Barr in lockstep. He's got a Senate that is only doing sound bites of, we have to push through the next Supreme Court justice nominee. And they're only getting those sound bites so quickly because they have to stop filleting Trump all the entire time.
He's got a machine.
Lindsey Graham is the goddamn worst about this. And we can't, and as Canadians, we can't think that we're clean on this. And all you have to do is look at Red Deer and everything that happened there. But
What
one
happened
of
to
the
Red
things
Deer?
that,
Wait. What
oh my
happened?
God. So a Black Lives Matter anti-racism peaceful protest was scheduled, and a team of white nationalists swept in and broke up the demonstration, assaulted the demonstrators, screamed white power nonsense at them. The whole thing was filmed, and the RCMP was there and did nothing. But this is where I think we actually have something that kind of works, and it heartens me when I'm hearing stories of like white people coming out to help black protesters. The story got picked up by CP24 in Edmonton, and it went viral. And after it went viral, that's when the RCMP went, we better do something. And so it heartens me and disheartens me at the same time that if we do something, it will force their hand.
the problem is if you look at the political math, okay, so look at the United States. And so so Lou and I were going back and forth, and we had an interesting conversation on our thread yesterday. And, I didn't realize how many white people there were in the US. Like, maybe that sounds really stupid, but and this is just Wikipedia basic stuff.
It's a lot. Like a lot.
76.3%, 76.3% of the United States population, because a lot of Latinos also are white, right? They
Yeah.
identify.
Yeah.
So you have to slot them that way. And 13% of the United States is black. That country is 338 million people. These are estimates. This is just Wikipedia stuff. But that, I did put in a calculator. That means you have 247 million white people and 42 million black people. So if you can take an election and you spin it in, because you know you're a fucking incompetent piece of shit like Trump, right? And you can spin it into, let's make it white versus black. You take the white moderates, you turn them into militant people. Oh my God, you use black images of any black person setting a garbage can on fire. You're like, look what they're doing, look what they're doing, look what they're doing. You pump it through your right-wing media. You get more of your white people interested. They outnumbered the other side by 200 million. That's how you win an election.
This is, and I've said this earlier on the show, that there is not a chance, and black folk know this, we can't win. We don't have a standing army. We do not have an economic system. We have been shut out from the get-go of that system. Our population base is just like, and this is always turns me to thinking about human notions of valor and honor, which are somewhat ludicrous to me. When you look at the threat that black folk are always used to as a threat to white folk, and the actual potential for black folk to be a threat, it's ludicrous. It is beyond cowardly. I don't have a word for how evil, and it's not something that just happens to black folk. This is a trait that is played around the world. It's been played on white folk. If you look at the class system in Britain historically, right? Like, the game has gone on forever. On a global level, for me, I also have to deal with the local. And part of the local is racial.
Yeah, and as soon as you generalize people, as soon as you say X people are X and create that fear, that's when all of these deaths happen. That's when because you are able to dehumanize people and you are able to antagonize people as only a threat rather than a human being and go and attack them. This is what happened in Nazi Germany, right? This is what's happening. This is what Trump is doing, like with the black community and the Mexican community. Remember when he was saying, oh, the Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers, or he said all of those things, right? Fear, it's a lot of fear mongering. And I think that's the problem with our world. We don't see people as individuals. We see them as a part of a group with a stereotype that doesn't make any sense.
But also,
I think what's really...
Sorry, I just want to add something quickly to what Bobby said. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna let you finish.
No. I'm gonna let Heather go too. Go, Heather. Go.
I just wanted to say to Bobby that, you know what? When you say that statistic, I've always looked at it the other way around. I've always thought, oh my God, for such a small percentage of the population, African Americans have done so much for America. They've done so much: sports, music, arts. Even in the world of synthetics, like they're African-American inventors who, I wrote a play about one. Who,
here we go.
Little plug.
I need a new toy for those ones.
There are a lot of black politicians who are doing very well. I mean,
yeah, scientists, you name it. There's so many African-Americans, and it's not just true of African-Americans, of course, but there are so many who have done so much to shape what America is.
Didn't they have a president?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
If only we could go back to those days.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
So
Heather was going to make a point.
yes, Heather, sorry.
Yeah.
It's not
Give Heather a shot.
Yeah, thanks. What I was going to talk about was the fact that we kind of have this two-faced coin with social media, right? So on the
Right.
one hand, because we have social media, things can go viral to support movements, like when injustice happens for Black Lives Matters, any like when you were talking about the thing that happened in Red Deer, that you know, until it went viral, not a really big issue. Oh, it went viral, we better do something about it. Fantastic, but it's also if you get caught. So if you're a person in power who gets caught doing something and it goes viral, you're usually screwed, except for Trump, who has admitted to doing any number of things. Like you'd figure that for your average person, Joe Biden, if he had, you know, if he had basically said that he had grabbed women by the pussy, he would not have gotten elected, right? It wouldn't have happened.
Point blank.
Trump is Teflon and nothing sticks to him. But you also have, with this incredible media, you know, the social media, you have this way to basically clump together with your tribe, right? So if you're a left-wing liberal, you can clump together with all those other left-wing liberals, and you're feeding yourself this information all the time. If you're a right-wing redneck, you can do that as well. So it's very difficult, and because of all the typing that happens on social media, where you're getting fed all of these in your little filter bubble, you're getting all this information. So you keep getting fed the things that you already think are true, as opposed to getting fed something like, I had talked a little bit to Andrew about this, like in 2016 when Trump got elected, you know, I woke up horrified, but then so, okay, there's a bigger problem here when half of the voters voted for him. And even friggin' Rob Reiner was talking about, like, when they did their Princess Bride reunion, he basically said, you know, it's coming to the point for another civil war in the United States, because they have these two factions who are so opposed to each other's ideals. And yet, when you're talking to individuals, when you're talking to, you know, the guy down the street who you're friends with, you know, and this guy, and as long as you're not specifically, I guess, aligning yourself with one party or the other, because those are really the only options. Even if you're an independent in the States, it means nothing. Like you don't fall within those camps. You're either a Democrat or you're a Republican. I think Canadians don't have that, because it's a little broader in Canada, where we find that we end up having to vote strategically, because boy, if you're an NDP supporter, but they're not going to win in your right, you better vote Liberal.
Right.
So still skew things to your way of thinking, right? So you've got kind of factions, and it's.
Can I add just one quick point? I don't know if human beings negotiate with what they can crush, right? A negotiation happens with threat, a potential threat. So you negotiate your way, right, to either genociding each other or to a compromise.
Right.
Black folk, and there's an interesting historical point around the success of the civil rights movement in the States, starting in the 50s, because there's been all kinds of civil rights movements in the States. They've always been crushed. There was a decolonialization period where the Russians and the Americans were going toe-to-toe around establishing power in these decolonialized nations in Africa and Asia. And the Russians were going full bore on, oh, they're talking about democracy, bringing you democracy. Look what they're doing to these Black people in the South. And there was a concerted effort by the powers that be in the States at that point to say, well, we got to change the game up. There is no longer a Russia to compete against the Americans on that level. So,
and look, this is all about power.
I was going to say that part of the sorry, Bobby, but now you messed up my segue.
I know. Fuck, I made it meta and I ruined the whole thing.
Let him segue. Jesus, Ferris Bueller.
No, but he had so much.
Part of that
let me make a
global
point.
power.
Let me make a point before you make your segue. You'll
Okay,
find
yes.
something, right?
Okay.
I just think, look, this is about power. It's not nice. They're in an election.
Yeah.
You're talking about a country who has political might because they have a military budget that's the same amount as the next 7 countries combined. Okay, so they kill their way into positions of power, and then we're Canadians and we're surprised. We're like, oh, that's not fair. Yeah, no shit, it's not fair.
Yeah, really.
Right? That whole country is founded on killing people to get to the top, right?
We're
And
not that much
Yeah.
different.
I would say
Every
I know-
country has been, right? Like
I know.
every country, like you go back far enough,
Sure.
that's all that people did. Is
Even
that,
here.
you know, you kill what you don't understand. If there are 2 people on the planet, something's going to happen. Somebody's going to hit the other guy with a rock, right? Like that person's just going to piss you off so much because like, those diametrically opposed kind of mindsets are what, and this notion that you just take, like you were saying, Bob.
right, let's put an
Yeah.
Indigenous person on this podcast and let's see what they have to say
But
about
it's
Canada.
true, right? Because even in
Oh my God.
Canada, there was so much mass genocide for the Indigenous peoples. And even today, they've been affected disproportionately by COVID because even our government isn't quite addressing it properly because we are built on a system that oppresses Indigenous people.
Can I say though?
Okay, go ahead. Toulouse.
Can I say though? I think it's. I don't think we can say that this is a pan-human experience. That people keep hitting each other in the head with rocks if they're different. I think those that hit people in the head with rocks win. And that's what we're left with as societies now. All of those societies that would help us out of this situation are largely extinct.
Well, the last election was won by Donald Trump. And Donald Trump won the last election.
Wait. I just got one. I got one thing.
Dude, I gotta go, man.
Oh, okay,
Yes,
okay.
okay.
All right,
Mooney, he
What?
just wants to do his damn
He was
segue.
Go ahead.
Open your mouth.
No,
Go.
there it is. Nope.
No,
It's gone.
no.
It's gone. It's gone.
No, I'm not gonna say anything. To your point.
Fine.
We apologize.
I'll do it very quickly. To the point of 71 point whatever it was, white people.
76.3.
76.3. I was listening to a podcast called Good One where they deconstruct a joke by a comedian. It was Dulce Sloan and her joke about hating New York. And she's an African American woman who hates New York. She lived in Atlanta, she lived in LA, and now she finds herself in New York. She hates the city. And she talks about this woman who said, you don't sound like you're from here. And it's like, no, I'm from Atlanta. So, oh, you must love being in New York. It goes, actually, I hate it. Goes, why? Isn't it racist down in South? It goes, what do you mean South? You mean like South as in south of Canada and north of Mexico? Because then she goes on to say, New York is so racist that they have, she lives in Greek towns, like they have neighborhoods for specific white people. Where she's from, it's just white. And it's true. And it's like all these different types of white people had to come in. The Italians came in, the Portuguese came in. They had to come in and do grunt labor and be completely disrespected in the entire time that they were there. And it took generations for them to actually to be called American or Canadian or whatever those things are.
Same thing here.
It's the exact same thing. So white people always be hating. And in this case, it's sometimes white people, but mostly black people. I'm sorry, Andrew, go ahead and you can talk.
No, but you know what? No, you brought up a very good point. Watch this, Bobby. You brought up a very good A lot of people hate New York. And there's a lot of reasons to hate New York. One of the reasons why people hate New York is because, of course, Donald Trump is from New York.
Oh,
and Donald Trump got to power using social media. And you know who else uses social media?
There we go.
J.K. Rowling. J.K.
Rowling. Someone get a mic to drop it. Just
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, because we don't have a lot of time for this topic, but recently J.K. Rowling tweeted that she bought a T-shirt from this website that has a lot of anti-trans messages on the T-shirts. I think she bought a T-shirt that says "This witch won't burn," which is, kind of obscure, but I kind of think I know what she means by that. But some of the other T-shirts that are on that website are T-shirts that say "fuck your pronouns," I don't give a shit about your pronouns, something like that. And granted, like Megan, you brought up a really good point, because not every trans person like is against J.K. Rowling. You brought up a really good video of a trans person who read the book. Like, she wrote this book. I can't remember what it was called. Something about
something blood.
Yeah.
True Blood, something like
with
that.
Cormorant Tiggerdan as the hero. I know I'm being dismissive of it, not because of this
Homophobic
trans
blood.
thing. What was that?
Homophobic blood.
Homophobic blood.
That
that's
was
what
the
it's called.
name. No.
I'm kind of making fun of it because, you know, it's not like her big hit was Harry Potter. Like, now
Yeah,
this is just
honestly.
some little fingers. It's like, whatever. I'll just write this because I'm bored. That's why I'm making fun of it. But it's fair enough to say, like, I haven't read the book. People who
Right.
have read the book will read it and say, well, there's one line in it about a guy who dresses up as a woman to kill somebody, but there's nothing inherently anti-transgender about that thing in the book, which I think is a fair, valid point to make. Megan,
I think it's fair too. From the video I watched, she's a YouTuber by the name of Blair White, and she, like Andrew mentioned, she read the book, and she had said that there was this one line mentioning that he dressed in a woman's outfit to lure a woman in, and she brought up an interesting point at the end that I kind of want to discuss with you all, where she said, to believe that this book is transphobic is to equate me to a man in a dress. Otherwise, it has nothing to do with transgender people. So I guess it begs the question, are we being, as allies, like, are we being transphobic by coming so hard on this book? Or are we righteous in doing so? This is something that's up for debate, right? Like,
I think she's
Yeah.
making a disingenuous argument. I mean, I think that J.K. Rowling is clearly, you know, like stoking the flames, fanning the flames of
right.
you know, sort of heteronormative fear, right? It's in a way, it's the exact same thing that Trump is doing, right? He's kind of like pandering to his base by casting Black people in the xenophobic, be afraid of them light. And I think JK is doing the same thing. She's basically pandering to straight people by being like, oh my God, these trans people, you don't want them in the bathroom with you. Buy my book, buy my book, buy my book.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
It's that when I heard about the fact that this book had a character or mentioned a character in this light, I was like, oh shit, was this thing just you shilling? Which horrified me, I think, almost even more, that she would politicize something this, which I don't believe that she politicized it. I think that she made a statement. When somebody called her on the statement, she didn't back down, because part of seems to be transphobic, regardless of the fact that she's, the champion for the underdog and like all of these things. But how many, so as I was reading her rebuttal to it and thinking, okay, so she says, can we as women be, hold on to our femininity, our womanhood? I'm like, okay, well, I'm a woman. I like to be a woman. I feel that being a woman defines me. But is that any different from how a trans woman feels that she is defined? And do we have to then fight about the difference? Do we have to, well, I menstruate, so I'm a real woman, Okay, well, I'm in menopause, I don't menstruate. Right?
Yeah.
You know what? Like, thank you so much, Heather. I so wanted to,
That's
I'm so glad you're both on the program, because I know, like, next week, because actually invited a trans man to be on the program to talk about this issue. But until then, I would love to hear your perspective as being cis women. Do you feel threatened by trans women? Do you feel that they are threatening your identity or your sense of womanhood?
No,
Or
not at
feminism?
all. I feel that, them being who they are is a great thing. Like, it's like, for me, I'm going, welcome. I view them as just as much of a woman as I am. It doesn't, it doesn't matter whether you were born a woman or not. To me, we are the same. We're women.
I think that the only, I feel for trans women who recognize that after they transition that they end up having the issues that all women have.
Yeah.
They're marginalized,
Okay.
assaulted, like all of those things. And I'm like, boy, you signed on for this. Good on you.
Well, it's
not
even
just a walk
worse.
in the park, you know? Yes, for sure. Oh, definitely.
For-
Definitely. It is so
Right.
much worse for trans women, trans men.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very generous of both of you to say, because
But, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it totally is.
the feminists that agree with J.K. Rowling feel the opposite. And as a matter of fact, what they feel is that trans women, first off, they misgender trans women all the time. So what they like to say, and I apologize, I'm simply repeating what they say. Don't, I'm the messenger, don't shoot me.
Down clip coming.
I know exactly. So going to get
Looks like we
canceled.
need a new host.
I know exactly. This little clip of what I'm about to
Canceled.
say is going to get
Here, internet.
broadcast. Exactly. Next thing you know, Andrew. I can't
Interrupt
believe you-
yourself when you're saying it, Andrew. Just
Exactly. Good idea. Good idea.
Do a Trump voice, you'll be fine.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I should. Yeah. Okay, so people, I'm a feminist, but so like what British feminists feel is that they feel like when trans women could use their transness to invade women's spaces and threaten them and assault them.
which is ridiculous.
No,
Oh my
totally
God, it's the
ridiculous.
most ridiculous. So first of all, if you're a dude who's gonna dress up as a woman to assault women, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind to do.
Yes, 100%.
Secondly, if you are a guy who is so anti-woman, I don't think you're going to do that because you're so threatened by femininity that you're not going to dress up as a woman so that you can do this. Like this trope of, it's like friggin' the trans person murderer, which is again why this particular book, because of the one line, is
Right.
making people crazy. But the fact that this trope has been a trope because it's people who don't know anything about a group.
Right.
It's like when you see friggin' any terrorist in the world now. Any terrorist in the world is going to be Middle Eastern.
Mm.
Can I
And
say-
trans women are way more at risk for assaults than they are likely to assault, right? Because let's say you force trans women to go in the men's bathroom. They might be assaulted by the men in that bathroom, right? And why I say it's more dangerous for trans women than us women, cis women, is there's more threat for attack if there is a really transphobic guy. Let's say they go on a date and they reveal they're trans, and then the guy feels threatened by that, and he's transphobic, he might kill her. And this has happened, right?
Can I one thing that are cross-dressers trans?
No.
No, those are
Like,
drag queens.
it's a fucking specious argument. And I have to say, and this is my history with discomfort and recognizing I'm being an idiot. I understand people's discomfort. I've gone through it so many times myself, but I recognize that I'm an asshole and I have to move away from these feelings because they actually define me in a way that I don't want to define myself, right? So yes, I have been not at ease with mixed race couples unless I was doing it, right? There's all kinds of things I've been uncomfortable with that if I examine those feelings, I'm just a nasty piece of work.
Well, and I think I was just going to add, like, I think that the feminists in England, because I honestly think it's not a problem in Canada. I could be wrong, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm sure there are turfs here, but
But
On
ultimately,
this
like,
podcast.
yeah, Todd, we're not talking to you.
God.
But I honestly think that the feminists in England really need to interact with trans people. Like in my
Yes.
life, my therapist is a trans woman. She's a trans woman, and the husband of the director that I just had, he was a trans man. And, you know, there's just, in my life, I've just come into contact with them and I gender them properly.
So I've got a little story. So my dad was military.
Mhm.
He did his degree in psychology in the 70s in Manitoba. His main paper was on how homosexuality was a mental defect.
Mm.
Whoa.
Forward, you know, like 30 years in the future, I meet my husband, whose mom is gay. So we're having Easter brunch with my parents.
Oh
And
no.
And I'm just like, oh, okay, this could be very interesting. And it was perfectly fine because they're all adults, they're all respectful, but my dad had never met a lesbian to his knowledge.
To
Afterwards,
his knowledge.
Dad, I said, hey, I want to thank you for just being open. I want to thank you for that. And he says, well, they didn't make any cracks about the military, so I didn't make any cracks about being lesbians, right? So this happened when we first got together. Then later on, my husband was a sperm donor for a lesbian couple. I was a surrogate for a gay couple. My dad had never really met gay men before, but because he'd had his introduction through lesbianism,
There we go. And I
right?
think
He was open.
so.
And I find it interesting that that kind of introduction, that knowledge of something other than yourself, other than your set worldview, is so helpful to broadening your horizons, as you said, Louis, that you're aware of and that you're trying to do for yourself, because otherwise you realize I'm just an asshole.
And at the end of the
Willing to
day,
and he is.
your horizons.
yeah, he is. And at the end of the day,
We all know.
I think
I
we
know.
just have to be able to be open to getting to know people instead of stereotyping, instead of going by X group of people is X.
Can I
Judge
say
people on
something?
a person by person basis. Yeah.
I also think, though, that, and this is something we all do, that the minute we get our back up and attack, and this goes with Trumpians as well, for me, I'm not saying I'm going to turn my back on you, right? But I'm going to at least give you a chance to change before I run you over with the car.
One thing I have noticed, and I'm pretty happy about this. Firstly, when Andrew, I'm sorry, my headphones cacked out on me. So Heather, if you could just repeat your 5-minute thing that you did there.
That'd be great. Thanks.
That'd be great.
Word for word.
I love that when Andrew threw to you both and asked you, if you had any problem with trans women at all, and you said no, which was the right answer. There was a part of me that just wanted you both to go, ooh, no, gross and weird.
J.K. Rowling forever.
It was
Hate that their boobs are always better than mine.
Exactly.
Yes.
The one thing that I am finding heartening is I am working on this joke in my act about supporting the trans community, and I live in Ottawa now, which is it's weird that it's a government town that votes conservative.
Oh, Heather and I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
It's weird that you want small government, yet they pay for your work.
I
Okay.
know, right?
So weird. But like in Toronto, if you come out as supporting the trans community, I mean, people, it's accepted, right? They go, yeah, and what I'm heartened to see is that even in the smaller communities and in Ottawa here specifically, when I do a sort of a support of the trans community joke, there is much more acceptance. There's a lot less backup, and maybe it's just like maybe comedy audiences are a little more savvy and more worldly, and maybe, I don't know, I'm still figuring it out here, but at least I'm heartened by the fact that the discussion is not odd, it's not off-putting, and it's becoming a little more mainstream. And if my little joke helps me kind of solidify that, then I'm happy with it.
I think it's funny too, because so my mom, who is very much a product of growing up in the 50s and Leave It to Beaverland and all of that, and
Right.
My people.
yes, so she will have these questions for me, right? And she'll say, well, what do you think of this? And she'll talk about, well, I just don't know what to call them anymore.
Right.
Right? I just don't know. I said, Mom, you just call them whatever they want to be called. Just ask. Or the other thing was, when statues were being torn down, well, what do you think of those statues it's history being ruined, right? And I'm like, well, okay, think about this, Mom. Think about, would you feel as badly if it were a statue of Hitler that was being torn down? Which stopped her, right? And so she's like, oh, I said, so kind of think about how the other person would think. Just put yourself in that mindset and have that notion that it's not all you. It's not all about you. And if you can just for a moment think about how it would feel to be a person of color, a trans woman, a trans man, to be gay, to be, to anything that is outside your realm of, kind of your day-to-day living. If you actually put yourself in those shoes, in which, as an actor, that's kind of what we do, right? Like that's where, and sometimes toward the detriment of our health or mental well-being, when you totally immerse yourself and you're like, oh my God, the world's so awful.
Yeah.
But that my mom, who's 75, every now and again when she'll come out with this thing, which if it had come from somebody in my social media circle, I'd be like, okay. But because she's my mom, I just basically say, okay, try to think about it this way. And because she's my mom and she loves me, she's like, oh, well, I never thought about it that way.
See, that's really great, because if you talk to my mom to this day about Jamaicans.
Oh,
Whoa!
no.
Whoa!
Look, every week,
Weirdly, same thing as my mom.
here's the thing, Todd. Every week, I try to say that to Todd. I try to say, think about what it's like to be a white person. Think about what it's like to live in those shoes. But no, he still hates white people. So, Todd, who is it this week? Who is the person that Todd hates?
Spoiled for choice, really. I was, you know what? Can I say all of them?
Wow.
Is that possible this week?
We've got two other white people on the show. You can't say that.
Excuse me,
Okay.
I just met you.
Okay, these two squares are fine. Half of that square is fine.
No.
And the rest.
No.
I'm going to actually go look at my emails now.
Wait, because I'm sure Lewis has got some white blood in him somewhere. He really does. I swear to God.
I'm admitting shit.
Here's me. I was thinking just today as we were leading into this. Do I go with the entire judicial system and all the white justices in the Breonna Taylor decision? Do I look at that? But no, I'm gonna go at a higher level and look right around Kentucky, and it's Mitch McConnell this week for you putting into place the judiciary committees and positions and justices that made the Breonna Taylor decision possible. This is on you for trying to escalate your Moscow Mitch manservant servitude to try and push through a justice into the Supreme Court that really shouldn't be there. This is on you. Mitch McConnell, there's a beautiful video of him tripping as he goes to a stage, and the only thing going through my head was, I wish it wasn't a stage he was tripping into, but actually a pit full of snakes. Ladies and gentlemen, this week's I fucking hate white people, Mitch McConnell.
Congratulations, Mitch.
We should send them something.
Yeah, we should.
Oh, like all the white people that I hate every week, we should send them something like a donation of their name to the NAACP, like something like that.
I want to add one thing to that.
Falling into the snakes.
I want to add one thing to that. I will admit my white blood when white people admit that they originally came from Africa.
Tell them.
Burn.
Wow.
Boom.
You know, I have a Scottish great grandmother. Okay, I'm just saying.
I just and they're all Africans. We're all a bunch of Africans. Shut up.
Well, thank you for saying that all white people do come from Africa, because so then the person that I love obviously has a shared heritage. So this week in my segment of Andrew Loves White People.
Be the hearts.
Why?
Email.
I want to bring attention actually to, and this is actually not only here's the thing. because I'm doing a segment every week about how I love white people, but then also too, this is a segment where I'm actually saying that I love a white police officer. I know, right? Mind blown. I know, exactly. Todd, come back. I know.
I'm out.
Now,
I'm kidding.
in December, the Toronto Police Services hired Constable Miles Glazer, who is the first openly transgender member of the Toronto Police Force.
Yay.
And he says, putting on a uniform every morning is nothing short of a dream come true. You know, Miles, for many, many years, struggled with whether he could even become a police officer, and struggled with his identity. And finally, when he realized that he was transgender and, began that transition and he began that journey, it took a lot, and it wasn't a sure thing, but the Toronto Police Services has accepted him as an officer. And hey, my hat's off to you, Miles. Good for you.
Good on him.
Yes, Miles.
Good on the Toronto Police Force for. I just hope that I'm okay. My cynical side says it's a political, a political show, but hopefully it's more than that. And my Leave It to Beaver side is going, oh gee, gushy gushy.
Oh my God, I got Lewis Taylor to be gushy gushy. Oh, well, I'm just going to end the show there.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, gee,
it,
gushy,
Wally.
gushy. We're out.
I didn't say that. I didn't say prove it.
Oh my, yes,
Prove
you
it.
did. Yes, you
No,
did.
It's on
you can't prove
camera.
it.
I don't know why
Can we get a
anyone-
replay of that?
Now,
I'm surprised anyone would want to be a cop right now, but
Yeah.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
you know,
Miles.
anyone who wants
but-
to do that job,
Wow.
thank
Yeah.
you. You know.
And Miles, here's
Yeah.
the deal, Miles. No, don't tase me, bro. Don't.
You don't do it. You
If you
good
see
guy.
me walking down the street, you can't just stop me and say, hey, where you going? You look like a suspect. Okay, Miles? Okay.
No.
Now, after having said that,
Narrator's voice. He'll do it.
I know. No, Miles.
Miles, you changed things from the inside. We're rooting for you.
We're rooting
We were
for you,
all
man.
rooting for
Really
you.
rooting for you.
You know something? It's really weird, but right now I'm feeling less threatened by cops than I have in a long time, because it seems like there is a directive from above. Don't look them in the eyes.
Yeah, no.
Mhm.
It's funny, like, okay, I know we're supposed to go, but it's funny, before this show, I had some errands to do, so I was biking downtown, and I got an email this morning that was really great, that means that one of my projects might go, so I was in a good mood, and it was sunny, I was biking down the street, and there was this police officer at a construction site, and I looked at him, and I waved, I was like, hey, buddy, and he looked at me, and he waved, he just smiled, and I was just like, oh, fuck, I'm supposed to hate you, fuck. Breonna Taylor, fuck.
Why do I get the feeling that Miles is going to be this show's milkshake duck?
Yeah, really.
It's just like, yay, Miles, Miles, and then 2 weeks later, okay, no Miles. So,
Back to the
No.
segment of things Todd can do is Todd would probably go by and go, hey.
Exactly, yeah, there you go.
Running by.
Yeah, here's hoping that Miles doesn't end up on your I fucking hate white people list. Okay? Like, here's
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
tune in
Yeah.
2 weeks.
hoping.
2 weeks.
Miles.
Oh, please, God, no.
Miles.
No.
Pressure on you, Miles. Okay,
Boy,
that's
if you
it.
think-
We gotta go.
Yeah,
You think
we're
we got-
done.
If
gotta
we
go.
got emails about firing off on J.K. Rowling, if I went off against an evil cop that just happened to be transgendered as well, oh boy,
I know,
Oh,
exactly.
man.
Career over.
Next-
cancellation. No way.
Speaking
This
of
is it,
over,
Andrew, I'm sorry.
that's it.
Yeah.
We're done.
Next week,
But,
let's see if we can
next
do the. We really didn't cover the second wave, so maybe we can include that.
And we also should cover what Bernie Sanders said about dictator Trump. True. But
Right.
that's next week, so you're going to have to tune in. You're going to have to come back, okay?
Yay.
That's it for Upload, and we'll see you guys next week.